Cool. Okay. Should we move on to the next bit? Okay. So this is like the main section. I'm not sure how long it lasts. Do you know how long it lasts
maybe
this
like
morning?
40 minutes or something.
40 minutes? Yeah, 30, 40 minutes, something like that.
So let's all mute.
Cool. And so yeah, it's basically we're just gonna go on like a bit of a journey through the heart states, and the each of the heart states I'm gonna kind of like give you some questions and some self-inquiry and just some things to kind of like play with and experience and just sort of like sink into, I guess, in your experience. And I call this practice radical open-hearted acceptance. And I was saying this morning that I think I might rename it to fucking radical open-hearted acceptance because that's the sort of radical that I mean. It's kind of like literally everything is welcome. So the main thing about this practice is that you can't get it wrong. Whatever is coming up, like thoughts, sensations, there's no division between like wholesome states, unwholesome states, like restlessness or whatever kind of is coming up, like that's what's coming up, and we just like welcome it into experience and allow it to be there, like make space for it to be there. And yeah, I think that's kind of like the ethos behind it. Everything else will kind of like unfold as we go. And hopefully you enjoy it. So we will start by, if you sort of get into a really comfortable posture, and if it feels comfortable, maybe place your hands on your belly and take a really deep breath in to your belly so that your hands kind of move out as you breathe in. And then do a really nice, long, slow out breath out through the nose. And then just sort of repeat that at your own pace. And if the out breath can be 4 seconds or longer, then that's ideal, but it doesn't need to be scientifically exact. And the reason that we start here is because doing these breaths help us relax with the noisy sounds around us. But doing these breaths basically just gives a signal to your body and sends you into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that you're in when you're relaxed, when you're safe, and just basically gives your body the message, I'm safe here and I can relax. So we'll just do a few more of those breaths, and you can maybe like notice how some of the tension is leaving your body as you do them. Okay, lovely. And we're just going to bring our attention down to the heart space, and this could be done however sort of feels most comfortable for you. So you might want to put a hand on your chest, or you might want to just sort of place your awareness in the middle of your chest. You could notice the sensations there, so maybe you can feel your heartbeat or you might get like a mental image of what your heart space looks like. It's kind of just like whatever experience comes to you when I say kind of put your center in your sort of heart space. Allow that to just kind of arise and take up its space in your experience. And again, just do a couple of breaths here. And we're going to start with friendliness or loving kindness. And the first question that I'm going to sort of pose to you for a bit of self-inquiry is, how would a kind friend describe you, or how would a kind friend see you? So with this, again, it's kind of like open as to how it might come to you, but it might be that you can sort of see yourself through their eyes almost, or it might be more descriptive. You might get some words that they might use to describe you. You might just sort of get a sense of how they see you and what they see. And we're just going to sort of sit with that for a couple of minutes. And it might be kind of, quite stable. You might get a good idea that you just want to sort of sit with, or you might want to kind of play with it and think of lots of different ways and or lots of different friends and how they might see you. So however it kind of unfolds for you, just sort of welcome it in. Lovely. So now the next kind of self-inquiry is feeling into what feels like your essence, and kind of whatever that means to you, whether there's something descriptive that you could describe as your essence, or something that's a little bit more kind of intangible and maybe a sense of something that's sort of like throughout your body and your experience, almost like what your experience is kind of infused with, just trying to sort of feel into that and get a sense of what it is and how it feels. Maybe like exploring if it feels different in different parts of your body or in sort of your mind and the way that you look at things. You can almost just sort of like have a bit of a play with what that means to you and how it feels in your experience. And again, we'll just spend a couple of minutes like hanging out here in our essences. Cool. So the next heart state that we're going to move on to is compassion and care. And with compassion, it's we want to kind of make space to sort of feel our feelings, feel the things we care about, and particularly like the challenging emotions that we don't always get space to kind of get space for in life, I suppose. So to start with, if you can just kind of like imagine something in your life, a scenario or a situation or something that you experience that is challenging for you in some way, and just kind of like paint a picture of it and bring it to mind, and almost try and get a sense of like the full picture of it, kind of where you are, what's happening, and almost just sort of like let that image or description, however it comes to you, just sort of come to your mind, and we'll just give ourselves like a minute or two to kind of like build that picture first, and then once we've got a picture, we'll go into the kind of emotions underneath. But if first you just get a good sense of what the scenario is. Okay, great. And then so almost what we want to do now is like just underneath what's happening in that scenario is kind of just like touch on the difficult emotions and make a bit of space for them. And with compassion, it's almost kind of like touch and go is the phrase that I like to use. It's like you're kind of making space for the challenging emotion and almost like touching on it and meeting it with a kind of loving awareness, a spaciousness, and then sort of like releasing yourself from it, so you're not getting kind of like bogged down. There's a sense of just kind of like welcoming it in, giving it a bit of space, bit of air, and then allowing it to sort of move past, or maybe it wants to change into something else, or maybe it needs a bit of space for you to sit in it for a while. But yeah, it's that kind of like spaciousness around it that we're kind of creating with the practice. So we'll do that now again, just for like a couple of minutes, to sit with the emotions that are happening for you under that challenging situation. Lovely. So the next heart state that we're going to is joy. And joy is like if we've been in the kind of more sort of like emotional particularly challenging emotions of compassion, joy's almost like it's kind of like the buoyancy that will bring us back to the surface, and we can kind of like open up to life in a really beautiful, joyful way. And with joy, all we need to do is to kind of like create enough space for it. So we almost want to just sort of kind of like open up to life, and then almost like put out an invitation or a welcome to the things that would give you joy. So it might be that there's just some kind of like free joy floating around an experience and you can just feel it, or it might be that like certain things come to mind, so you might be able to think of like a person that gives you joy, or like a pet or something, an animal, or maybe a place, or anything along those lines, anything that kind of like brings joy to you, something somebody said to you. It can be anything that like brings up a kind of joyful response in you, and we'll just sit with that for a couple of minutes. Nice. So we're going to stay in joy, but we're actually going to open up to a bit more of like the dark side of life. So this is one of the really beautiful things about joy, is that it can obviously kind of like be a way of opening up to lots of the like beauty and all of these lovely things in life. But joy can actually also help us kind of like open to and engage with the dark side of life in like a really kind of like wholehearted, wholesome way. So with this, and it can also, one of the really magic things about joy and the darkness is that it can make something that seems really kind of like difficult or like maybe sort of like stressful or challenging in some way, it can make it almost like fun or something, because you can like the joy can come through in these emotions that are like typically classed as being more kind of like, we judge ourselves for having them, for example. So yeah, with this it's completely kind of like non-judgmental, open space, and the question we're looking for is like something funny in a kind of absurd sort of way that gives you joy, or it could be something that's kind of like darkly fascinating to you. Might be something like a bit erotic or kind of a bit edgy, anything that's kind of got a little bit of sort of darkness and is maybe a part of ourselves that we kind of don't always open to, maybe a little bit more of a kind of wild side, is just, yeah, giving ourselves a bit of space to kind of open up to that, allow it into our experience in a space where there's just no judgment. We're just allowing ourselves to kind of take joy in it, and appreciate it. And we will just sit with that for a couple of minutes as well. Beautiful. So we have gone on a bit of a journey so far. We started by seeing ourselves through the eyes of a kind friend, and then we sort of connected with our essence, and then we brought to mind a more kind of challenging situation in our life, and connected with some of the more difficult emotions that sit underneath that. And then we opened up to some of the kind of joy and beauty in life, and then also connected with some of the kind of darker parts of life that we also take joy in. And the final kind of like heart space that we're going to move into is equanimity. And with this, we're just going to make a load of space, basically. We're going to kind of just like relax into our heart space and almost kind of like really lean back into it. And I think one of the misconceptions about equanimity is that it's a kind of like static, calm, nothingy state, and actually it's more that your energy is going into kind of like holding the space around you. That's almost like a really open, wide space that you're creating, and that's where your kind of energy and effort is being put. And then you're allowing things to sort of like bubble up and arise into that space. So rather than kind of like going out looking for things in your experience, you're just leaning back and then watching as things arise. And the question that allows that to happen is what feels important now? So it's almost holding the space, asking yourself what feels important now, and then watching as whatever it is that's most important arises, because that's what will come up naturally in your experience anyway. And it could be that what feels important is a physical sensation, it could be an emotion, it could be a thought, it could be something about yourself that you want to recognise, or your life that you want to recognise after this kind of journey we've been on. It could be anything, and it's just like making space to allow whatever feels important to be expressed in. And we'll again just kind of sit with that question for a few minutes, and you can sort of keep asking it. You can just ask it once, or you can use it as a sort of self-inquiry where you keep asking yourself whatever feels right for you at this moment. Lovely. Cool. So that is the end of the journey through the heart spaces. So we're just going to do like a few more of those breaths into the belly. Really nice deep breaths. And with these ones, when you breathe out, just let out like a big sort of sighing kind of breath of like that kind of breath, either making the sound or whatever feels like a nice kind of like release of air. And yeah, we almost just want to like get the air circulating around our heart space almost, if that metaphor makes any sense, but just really almost like everything that we've kind of like journeyed through and open to throughout this, it's almost just as if it's kind of like, yeah, getting the air in there and making it nice and fresh. And once you feel that that's sort of, you've done some really nice kind of clearing breaths, maybe like having a bit of a stretch out of the arms or the back, and kind of like coming back into the room, opening the eyes,